Start with name and rank, I guess.
Yes. My name's Adam Bonds. The Navy ranks are a little bit different from everybody else. So technically an E6, which is the general thing throughout all the military. But I'll be petty officer first class in generic terms, or specifically to my rate, Torpedoman's in first class.
Great. How old are you?
I'm 43 now.
Sounds good. How old were you when you served?
When I was active duty, I joined when I was 19 years old. I served until I was 26. Active duty was out for a few years. 9/11 happened, I went back in. So from 29 to about 33 or so in the Navy Reserve.
Sounds good. Where were you born?
I was born at Fort George G. Meade in Maryland. It's an Army base and where currently the NSA is.
Ah, so you come from you come from an Army family?
No. There's lots of military in my family. My father is retired Navy, or was retired Navy. But there is Army in my family, but mostly it's Navy.
So where did you serve? Where were you deployed, rather?
Okay, well that's a.
I mean, it's Navy, you're probably in a boat.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, so the chain of command, or not chain of command, but the strings of commands was Service School Command in Orlando. That's where I went to boot camp, and then my A school, which is basic undersea weapons, in particular surface torpedo. It's called basic torpedo maintenance school, and then from there went to deep sea dive school in Little Creek, Virginia, and from there I went to the USS Eisenhower, and I was in the weapons department, so either building bombs or then I got shifted over to G2, which is the armory. And so at that point I took care of the torpedoes for air launch and small alarms.
So you were in the USS Eisenhower?
Yes.
Which was wasn't that a Nimitz class carrier?
It is. It's the second of the series.
So it must have been CVN 70, right?
69.
Ah,
Nimitz is 68.
that's right.
And from there, I went to Keyport, Washington. When I was on the Eisenhower, we were in Norfolk, and then we did a med cruise in which we partook in the Bosnia-Herzegovina action there, and Southern Watch, because the leftover portion of Desert Storm. Also, as soon as we got back, a month after our return, we were spun right back up for Uphold Democracy, which was the invasion of Haiti, in which we had the 10th Mountain Division on board with their Black Hawks, Cobras, and Stallions, Super Stallions.
Yeah.
And after the Eisenhower, I went to Keyport, Washington to Advanced Undersea Weapons School, and then I went to the weapons station in Yokosuka, Japan. And then I was out for a couple of years. 9/11 happened. Got a call saying, "Petty Officer Bonds, you have the skill set that we need," because my entire career to that point was weapons, explosives, small arms, security. And they really needed that after the attacks. And so I got a call, and I was like, okay. And that was the attacks were on Tuesday. Thursday was the phone call. And I said, all right, if I'm going to come back, and I didn't have to come back, but if I'm going to call back, if Uncle Sam's going, "Petty Officer Bonds, we need you. I don't want to sit around drinking coffee."
Yeah.
And so I joined the reserves September 27th. In October, I did a weekend drill just to see what the reserves are like, which was completely different than active duty. And I talked to a couple of different units, and one of them was in Short Boat Unit 25, which is a coastal warfare riverine unit. And at the time, they were built up for force protection. The USS Cole, you may have heard about in 1999.
Wasn't that weren't they attacked or?
They were
Yeah,
attacked
that's right.
in Yemen, and
Okay.
so as a result of that, this unit was stood up, and then I joined that unit, and so and I met with them in October, November. I show up for a drill weekend, which turned into a month-long training, which turned into a deployment. And at that point, I realized I didn't have enough underwear with me, so they were like, "Petty Officer Bonds, it's okay, you're not going because we still have to get you dialed in for the the weapons and the systems, and so I stayed back with a couple of guys, and then a couple months later deployed for 2 months.
Sounds good. So you were part of a small boat unit?
I was.
Oh, so you were basically I don't want to say tugboats. You were like guarding there.
No,
Oh,
we weren't
oh,
tugboats.
I'm sorry.
Okay.
I mean, no, you weren't that.
What we were is we had like armed patrol craft.
Yeah, okay.
We had initially, the boats that we had were designed for laying sonar buoys, and they are for harbor defense. And they just modified them by putting gun mounts on them. And there was open hull, so there was no protection from the elements except for a windscreen. We had to remove the side windows because anytime water would hit the side, it'd come in and smash the coxswain, which is the boat driver. So now it's just, you get hit, it's water's coming, which is actually more comfortable than get smacked by plexiglass or glass. And so our communication was strictly just yelling as loud as you can, because you're trying to get over the volume of either gunfire or like 200 horsepower Volvo Penta engines.
Yeah.
So it produces a lot of noise. Then we were blessed with, we're given a 34-foot long jet boats. And so it's the same propulsion system same propulsion idea as a jet ski, only it's much larger. And so this one we can spin them around in a circle, go directly sideways. Again, better for the coxswain because you're wrapped around, but the gunners aren't so comfortable.
So, what inspired you to join the Navy, other than, I'm guessing, your family, with your family history maybe?
Ironically, my family had zero influence on
Really?
joining. It was 100%. My parents divorced when I was young, so in his time, my father's time in the service was all before I was around, before he even met my mother, and it wasn't. He was Vietnam era, and he didn't talk about it at all. And so when I just always had a sense of like a duty, a sense of honor. I myself was a Boy Scout, never achieved the rank of Eagle because I was busy or learning how to not chop down trees with hatchets and all that stuff that we were supposed to do or not do. So. That's why I joined the military, so I could actually do the stuff that I wanted to do that they wouldn't let me do in the Boy Scouts. But I was part of the Boy Scouts, and I always had a sense of duty to the country, and I also had a very strong belief that even though I have certain inalienable rights as guaranteed to me by the Constitution, I also wanted to earn those rights. Okay, just because I'm entitled to them doesn't mean that I shouldn't earn them. And that's something I feel strongly that everybody should earn, like either through the military or some other service branch or service to the country, whether it be volunteering at the YMCA, AmeriCorps, at the retirement communities. Just earn your rights, earn your freedom, because we have so many freedoms and rights that I think a lot of people, not just my generation, your generation, but so many people just take it for advantage of, and without appreciating what was sacrificed so they could. So my way of giving back is, all right, thank you for giving me these rights. Now I'm going to continue to protect the rights of those that follow behind. So that is why I joined.
So what did you do before you volunteered?
At the time, I worked in the hospitality department of a hotel near where I lived. Anything from a restaurant to room service to events, banquets, that sort of thing. And I also volunteered as an EMT in the neighboring county. The neighboring county was a very rural county, so all the fire departments were volunteer. They had a couple full-time individuals during the work day, but the rest of it was all volunteer. And so that was the beginning of my paying back, if you will. It So that's what I was doing before I joined the service.
Did the medical service or the medical experience you had before you joined the service kind of help you get in there, or was it a benefactor?
It did benefit me in the sense that, not directly. When I joined, I wanted to be initially I was going to be a rescue swimmer, so jumping out of the helicopters, and then it's going to be intestinal warfare. At the time, a buddy of mine talked me out of it. He said, that's not what you want to do, because when I originally was going to join was right before Desert Storm. And he's like, don't do it, this is not what you want to do, you want to go off to college. And I found out a year later he's a conscientious objector. He was opposed to the military, period. Okay? So that kind of angered me. And so I ended up going back, and it's like, well, I was going to say, hey, you know what, I'm already in EMT, let's see if I can apply that, but that wasn't one of the options. So the option that I could have as a diver was, I could either be a toilet or plumber technician, or I could play with explosives.
So explosives as a plumber.
Yeah, so as a 19-year-old male and former Boy Scout, explosives is the way I went, you know.
Definitely.
And so I went but in hindsight, I wish I would have went actually for the electronics portion of it, because that would have helped me out afterwards. But in hindsight, being what it may, I would have chosen a lot of other different routes.
Yeah.
Now I forgot what the question was.
Oh, was now the
The EMT. So
yeah.
So what I ended up becoming with my unit, a CPR instructor, and also because my job was working as a quick reaction force, security force on the Eisenhower behind the Marine Corps. We had a MARDET, or a Marine Detachment on board, whose primary function was to be the ship's security and be the vanguard of a defensive attack, okay, or a defensive force. We backed them up, so we secured the area, they went in. But being the EMT, I was also during general quarters and stuff like that. I was the one that I responded to. Like if there was someone that had an injury, like I'm the one that took care of them on the team. And so that carried on to when I was in Japan, and with my unit, where on occasion I would have to apply it, even though we had corpsmen.
All right. So how did your service in the military affect what you are today?
The active duty portion, the pre-9/11, I don't think it really affected me that much, in that outside of it gave me, and that's the funny thing, I don't know if it actually gave it to me or just honed who I already was really the sense of the strong sense of duty, attention to detail, and just very, like, this is my job, strong work ethic, I guess is what I'm trying to say. And it definitely gave me a lot of benefits, helped with education, and experiences. By the time I was 22 years old, I had literally been all over the world, north of the equator. Post 9/11, it was a little bit different. The unit I was with, when we were deployed in 2004, for that year, we were woefully ill-prepared, both in manpower, equipment, leadership, and we made do with what we had, but there was definitely a lot of problems. The rules of engagement made things far more difficult than they should have been, and as a result, things happened. I was fortunate that my unit didn't actually have anyone KIA. We did have those who were seriously injured, and so it brought down our combat efficiency, or effectiveness. We also had some people, when we deployed, 3 days, literally 3 days before we convoyed up from Annapolis, Maryland to McGuire Air Force Base in New Jersey, there were people being ripped from all over, other units all over the country to deploy with us. And because of that, we had people that should have known but didn't know what the nomenclature of our equipment, or even none of them even heard of our unit. And so we went with a lot of people who had zero experience, zero knowledge, and unfortunately almost zero desire to be there. And so because of that, we had a number of people who couldn't swim. If you were going to be on boats,
Yeah.
because we had a number of those people who didn't know how to swim, that extra load was put on those of us who did. So patrols that were 8 hours were actually 12, and that's not including the briefing, gearing up, debriefing, cleanup. So we were averaging maybe 6 hours of sleep at best. And unfortunately, because of the situation, have you ever seen the movie The Hurt Locker?
Yes.
I think you are.
Yes, I have.
What was the general feeling that you had during that movie?
I felt kind of claustrophobic in a sense, or sometimes because of or anxious, definitely, because, well, these guys were in life and death situations. I mean, pretty much everyone in the military, when you're really serving, you're really putting yourself in that spot. But these guys, I mean, the danger was like right in front of them. It was intense.
When we deployed, the first time we deployed in 2001, 2002, our job was strictly defensive. It was strictly force protection. 2004, the job changed where now we did force protection, but now we did far more. Now we did interdiction, now we did vessel boarding. Now we were sweeping vessels and vehicles for explosives, IEDs, and contraband. And when we did that, we went with zero training. Okay, we were on the way in the summer before we deployed. We were in Aberdeen Proving Ground in Maryland, and we had the chance to fire from the weapons from the boats on the water at shore targets, at water targets, where all the crew served, work with the close quarters battle, learn how to call in air support, learn how to call in medevac. We had this opportunity, and because of the poor leadership above us, and really only because of one man, we didn't. And so we left with woefully unprepared. And so we were tasked with boarding vessels and looking for explosives, and with no tight quarters battle preparation, no idea what to look for as far as explosives. For a cursory, we had a guy come into the classroom and show us a video. Okay, and so like everything, we looked at everything. So the entire year I was there felt like that 2 hour, 2.5 hours of the movie was just wound up, because I don't know, it's like, what is this, what is this, and what is this, and all of a sudden you see something, now your pucker factor goes up, and you feel hot, and you feel everything get going, like something's going on here. And so that's that tension, that feeling that you do have, your body adapts to that. You come home, and when we're deployed, everything, like you're constantly looking for where's the threat vector, where's that going to be coming from. Like driving, you're parking, or you're stopping at least a car length from the person in front of you. You're avoiding potholes. You sitting constantly with the back to the wall, scanning anybody that comes in, comes out. You know where like the egress is. Like, is it there or through the window? You just, it's like a bunch of stupid things. Certain sounds, certain smells. They start spinning you up. Okay, and so, and when I came back, this is a really long way of saying, like, when I first came back, unfortunately I was in a relationship that chapter is not even, it's in a different book, and that book is gone. Okay, so you have to go from this speed down to this speed, and plus I was up here, and I grew up in Maryland, so I knew no one up here, and the reacclimation process was very, very, very poorly managed. I was isolated from friends and family, I was isolated from work, I was isolated from the military, I was isolated from veterans, I did not know anything. And when that happens, you go into the mode that you know, okay, which is very aggressively defensive in nature. And the process ended up being not going well. And the long and short of it is I ended up homeless at one point. I spent 1.5 years homeless. And like through that time, I'm like, I'm good, I don't have a problem. You know, it's like, yeah, I know I'm homeless and getting divorced, and, but I'm good, you know. And eventually I got to the point where like threatened my boss, I was gonna kick his ass. I'll be honest, I can't even remember what happened. And fortunately I wasn't fired, because at that time, like I was a team player of the month, team player of the quarter. Like I was Johnny on the spot, I'm good to go. Snapped. I go back to the shelter, and there's going like, what are you doing here? You're supposed to be home, or you're supposed to be at work. And I was like, I threatened to kick my boss's ass. He's like, still think you don't have a problem? I was like, so he lists all these different things. And I was like, all right, yeah, maybe I have an issue. And he's like, all right, you need to go to the Lowell Vet Center. So I go to the Lowell Vet Center, and they bring me in, and that's when I start my process of, not the fact that I'm definitely suffering from something like PTSD, and even then, it's still something I didn't want to accept, because of the disorder, you know, and there's still, I mean, this is still early on, you know, and so people are still trying to figure out what's going on. So initially, very bad. That was, I would have to say it was very bad. It took me a long, long time to get to where I am now, and where I am now is still in recovery. Okay, I'm not. I had a nightmare last night, for example. So it's not always good. But what I do have now is the thing that really helped, I think, in my recovery is a few years ago. There's a man by the name of Richard Barbado. You can say I understand. It's like, not really. You know, you can maybe appreciate, but you're not going to really fully understand. And so, like everything from the humor to like pick just if something's going on, you know, like, all right, I got your back, and we immediately go into gear to help out any one of us. It doesn't matter if we know them well or know them hardly at all. And that's what we do, and that's right there. It's like I hated Gloucester, I hated Cape Ann. This was enemy territory. This is my ex-wife's territory. These are her friends, but now this is my community. These are my family. These are my brothers, my sisters, and that's the good part. Now I spent a couple years meeting people and finding other veterans who need help, who don't understand that they need help, or more importantly, they don't know how to get the help. So I get them connected because I find them. You can ask Adam, like for whatever reason, whenever I order or have food out in town, I come across another veteran, you know, bring them to our coffees, you know, and so I order a pizza, hey, you're a vet, come on, you know, like, oh, can I get some chicken and some, oh, you're a vet, come on, you know, hey, like, can you put some extra cheese on that pizza, oh, vet, come on, you know, and, but it's fitting, it's food, so, we like food, but anyway, so now I've taken those experiences, the troubles with coping, dealing with like the nightmares, dealing with the anger, dealing with the homelessness, dealing with like the treatment process, like with all these experiences that that no matter what felt like I was doing, I just kept ending up in a bad spot. And all these experiences, like, have brought me around to where, like, now, like, I can relate to all these guys. And so, as much as I would like to say or have to say that it was a bad experience, the overarching things is actually very important and a great experience, because now I can help the other veterans. I work now as an employment representative, connecting veterans to employers and training, and we network. I know veterans all over the North Shore. So yes, the overall experience is good.
Thanks. What kind of advice would you be looking to give to someone looking to volunteer today?
Volunteer for the military?
Yeah.
Well, first off, like, volunteer, join something. Whether it be the military, like, God bless you if you join the military, or help seniors, Habitat for Humanity, the YMCA, AmeriCorps, something. Join something. Everybody, I think, as soon as you get out of high school, volunteer for
Give back.
Give back, like, a greater good. Do something for a greater good. If you're going to the military, don't just talk to one of the guys, or the recruiters at one of the services, unless you are bent on a certain branch of service. As a matter of fact, I wanted to originally join the Air Force because I liked aircraft.
Yeah.
Well, I was walking to the recruiting station to see the Air Force recruiter walk out the front door because I came through the parking lot. So I was hanging out there and started talking to a Navy recruiter. I ended up over there, And ironically, everybody that I knew was surprised I joined the Navy. And I was like, why is that? It's like, I thought you'd be a Marine. Why? Because you're mean? And I was like, yeah, okay. And even my fiance, she's like, I still don't see you as a Navy. I think you would have been a Marine. So apparently no one likes me. But join and talk to as many veterans that you can find in that particular branch of service, because they all they've been there. They 20/20 hindsight, so they would love to bestow their knowledge and that they've gained, either mostly through error, and pass it on to the next generation. Like, if this is what you want to do, this is what you should do. Okay, and don't do this. Do this. Don't eat these MREs. Eat these MREs. Or make sure you have plenty of these.
Yeah.
So definitely talk to the veterans. And the best way to do that is go to your local veteran service office, the veteran service organizations like the VFW, American Legion. Find the veterans and talk to them.
Awesome.
So, your story, it's pretty common, to hear that, lots of veterans, end up after their deployment, in hard times and hard troubles. Did you ever feel like, the country that you served let you down in some way?
No. I've never felt that way. What I felt was the people I was associated with when I first discharged either were naive, in some cases ignorant, in other cases, or blatantly dismissive. Okay, but it wasn't my country; they were individuals. I feel that strongly that certainly, for instance, the Veterans Administration. I know from communication with people involved in VAs in other parts of the country that the one that we have here in Massachusetts is by far the standard in which all of them should strive to achieve. I think the problem was twofold. One is that you have this organization, at the time, unfortunately, mostly ran by civilians. And almost, especially at the top. And so I think the thought process, and I've talked to some of them, is their idea was if we build it, they will come. But that's not the way things are. And why would you go to something if you don't, or you heard about it, but there's no clearly defined path in which to achieve what it is that you're trying to gain. The other part is that the type of warfare that we do now is different from 20 years ago. Back then, you had these huge bases, huge forces, and when they moved out en masse. Think of Desert Storm, think of Vietnam, think of everything. And then they came back en masse. Well, now you saw these huge bases, but they have smaller units deployed. Okay, and then from there they break down even further. And so where you're now, you have a Overwatch position with just you and maybe a squad, or in my case, we had a housing compound, we had an operation compound, and we went out in debts, and a debt would be 3 to 4 boats, and then now each boat had a certain area of responsibility, and that's how our brains work now. So it can't be this one giant thing. You have to be in the community, and that's the thing that they've slowly come around. And one of the things that the VA here in Massachusetts has adapted is what they call peer support specialists, veterans who have been there. They've been through the homelessness, been through the substance abuse, have been through the different addictions, have been through suicide attempt, whatever. They've been there, they experienced it. I can relate to you. I really can. So, and those are the ones that are doing the real work. And then as a result of that, we have these veteran coffees that we go to. We don't sit around talking about feelings or anything like that. We sit there to be with our brothers and our sisters, and we talk. And surprisingly, what happens is, not really surprisingly, but for the people who didn't realize this, when I hear a brother say, dude, I almost lost my car because I couldn't make payments, but I was able to talk to someone and they were able to spot me the money to do it. I'm going through that right now. All right, well, talk to this guy or talk to this lady. The VA say, if you do this, we can help. Okay, now you're a government organization. A friend, a trusted friend, a veteran, says, hey man, if you do this, they can help. All right, cool. Now I'll do this. And so what ends up happening is we get together, we have camaraderie, we can be ourselves, we can joke the way we want to, we talk the way we want to, and when someone needs help, we step up the way we will. Veterans are awful at self-advocacy, okay? Because our job was always take care of everybody, okay? You have my back, I have your back. That is the way. And so as a result, we come back and we're not very good at asking for help, but we'll get help from each other.
Makes sense.
Okay, so that's the veteran coffees that we have all over is probably the best thing that this community's ever experienced as far as veteran advocacy. The only thing I actually want to say was I appreciate what you guys are doing. When I was taking classes over at North Shore Community College, I realized that there's a huge disconnect between, we'll call them the millennials and my generation. And I was speaking with one of my classmates, and she was I mentioned that I was a veteran. She said, "You're a veteran?" I was like, "Yeah, but you don't seem that old." I was like, "No, the veterans aren't just like Vietnam and World War II." She's like, "Oh, there's a war going on right It's like, oh yeah, yeah, that's right. So those guys are veterans? Like, yes, if you served in the military and you get out, you're a veteran. Another kid I talked to was like, tell me how his brother is in the military. I was like, that's cool. What service? I don't know. You don't know what branch of the military? No. What does his uniform look like? Camouflaged? So, like, his own brother was in the military and he didn't know what certain branch. And so there's this huge disconnect. And I see young men such as yourselves, like, reaching out, speaking to the veterans, wanting to get a better understanding, and educate your generation and others who either don't understand, they are naive to the fact, or, like I said, they're ignorant. They don't want to know what it's like because they have this idea, or worse, blatantly dismissive. I don't care what you are going through. And I just want to say thank you very much.
Yeah, that's one of the main goals of the project, to break the disconnect and really to shed light on this issue. Thank you.
Thank you.